This is a song by Herbert Lovett. How beautiful it is, how wonderful to hear, how lucky you are to be alive on this day, full of electricity, memory, and thrill, as it surges ahead like a wave on the shore, as it drifts along like a leaf on a breeze, as it runs its course like a brook to the sea. This has been a song by Herbert Lovett. He was a type of genius in his own little way.
I don't know if they really care. All I really believe is the love that I receive. My only prayer would be, you just step forward for me, and it's not make believe. My one only prayer is that someday you can. My hopes, my dreams come true. Lots of thoughts, plans, things.
Session. Great pleasure to introduce first of all Herb, who's a good friend of mine, and one of the first. I didn't meet him as a friend. I met him as a psychologist, and he was one of the first psychologists.
Are you ready to share with the group, Joe?
I'm sharing them. And one of the first psychologists that actually used the word love and mean it. And since then, the relationship, which did start as a form of meeting at a conference like this, has really grown and made me feel very strong by being associated in lots of ways and given me lots of strength. And I'm sure lots of people that he comes in contact with gives that strength too. I'm not going to say anything about his background in terms of his sort of academic qualifications and sort of experiences, but just to say I'm really, really pleased to have him here. And it's good that you're here. And I'm going to allow you to do the rest yourself, Herb. Okay. Okay, thank you.
I was a little surprised that, is this working? Yeah, it is, okay. I'm a little surprised to see my name listed under this topic of living in the community. It's a word that often confuses me, and since I have about 2 social impulses per year, I feel uniquely unqualified to talk about that generally. On the other hand, this year's workshop 2 has turned out to be a type of community with parents and professionals and at least 1 or 2 people who use services. So I thought I'd give you a little report on what we've been going through. And one of the first things we talked about this year was the whole issue of language. And, you know, what are we calling people this week? And are they people with learning disabilities, learning difficulties, special needs, challenging needs, and so on. And what I think we came to some understanding is that all these terms are provisional, necessarily, because the people they apply to really haven't told us yet what that means for them. And it seems in most of the English-speaking world, the term disabled people has taken on the mark of respect that people with disabilities are saying they want to be called. But this is new and the movement's young, isn't it? And as things change, we're going to have new, I suspect we're going to see new terminology. In the United States, where we've had at least 40 years of really active and overt struggle around racial civil rights, We've gone from calling people Negroes to Afro-Americans to black to people of color. Most recently, we've been using African-American. And there are a lot of people who criticize that, saying, you know, why can't those people make up their minds? Well, the reality is that African-Americans, by any measure, simply do not have the power and status that white Americans do. Some here and there, now and then, but as a group, no. And so long as we have that struggle, we're going to have this confusion around the terminology. Eventually, if we get it right, those terms, there'll be some term to denote racial difference, but it won't be electrically charged. It'll just be a description. So I think that's what we're trying to do in this movement, and we're stuck until the inequality is finally removed, aren't we? So we're in for a bumpy ride. But I think this business about names is not trivial. If it wasn't Confucius, then he should have said, in order to know the truth, you have to know the right names of things. And so I think our uncertainty at the beginning of our group on what are we calling each other, what are the terms, reflects a fundamental uncertainty of where are we and how far have we gotten in this journey. And of course, disability issues have changed a lot over the last 50 years. As some of you know, right after World War II, all over the world, apparently spontaneously, parents banded together and demanded specialized provision for their children. And the impulse then was to find the best therapy, the best setting, the best segregated services we could get. Now, this happened at a time when most of the civilized world was really in love with technology. This was a time where we knew the atom bomb was going to bring world peace. We knew that automobiles would end pollution from coal-burning engines. Antibiotics would eradicate infectious diseases. And of course, new appliances and machines would make it so that you would be able to live in a maintenance-free home and earn a comfortable wage after 20 hours a week. And all that happened, didn't it? These are promises that have come true, or soon will. So that, you know, we also believed at that time that the new behavioral sciences, with a cunning little scheme of rewards and punishments, could remove difficult behavior effortlessly. And I think that dream is dead, I hope. But it's not dead so long as it's funded. So I hope we've come to that point in our history where we've started to recognize that the end point of pure thought is probably death, and that we're not going to think our way out of these problems, and that what we require is a new respect for the irrational, the intuitive, and the felt. And we are discovering that we need people who step out of the mold of what we'd created in the earlier parts of the 20th century, to remind us of who we really are and who we need to be for one another. If it takes a whole village to raise a child, I think it takes all the villagers to make a whole world. And we're belatedly recognizing that if we're going to create a world that's safe and sane. And I think now mainstream culture is turning to groups that they once rejected, not because they suddenly discovered nice, but they intuitively know they need this to survive. Because I'm not the first person to suspect that possibly the planet is in danger. So, one of the questions that it brings us to is, so what do these disabled people want? And last year's T-shirt, since one of the charming things about Marxism and capitalism alike is that it reduces all thought to slogans. Last year's deep thought was to go boldly where everyone else has gone before. It's a nice thought. I just don't think you're going to do it, frankly. And the simple reason for that is every time someone comes into or goes out of a group, it changes. And the weather in a room changes with the people in it. So by the time we get disabled people fully included, it's not going to be where everyone else has been before. It's going to be a new world for all of us, won't it? And what we're really working on, I think, is coming up with a new definition of normal. I think in the future, normal architecture won't include stairs, although it does now. In the future, we'll have a different etiquette. It won't be normal to be quiet in church or in nice restaurants. Oh, it's oppressively the case at present. We're going to have a wider range of what's going to be okay. In the future, it won't be normal to expect to provide seating for all your guests, that some people are thoughtful enough to bring their own chairs when they come to visit. And it won't be normal, as it currently is, to assume that people who are different want to be like everyone else. It may come as a surprise, but a lot of people with autism don't particularly want to lose that. People who don't hear don't necessarily want to. People who don't see aren't particularly jealous of those who do. And so in our group, we've been talking about things like, why do we get stuck on having people learn to tie their shoes when they could get Velcro straps or shoes that slip on, or even, what a concept, have someone help them tie them. But so long as we believe that you don't belong until you're independent, you're going to be trapped in a world where you're getting ready. And as one person in our group very radically suggested, maybe this person we're trying to teach to tie shoes wants to learn to take the bus. So why not start teaching people what they want to learn instead of what we think they need to learn? So I believe children need to go to special schools in segregated places if they're going to get ready for adult day wasting centers, and if they're going to get ready to live in group homes and hostels, in behavior gulags. Those are useful places to learn those things. But the second parent movement, the so-called younger parents, have been saying, if you really believe our kids have something to contribute, if you're really going to believe they're needed, if you really believe that they're going to get paid work or have a valued role and a necessary role in our society, then they're going to have to be in the regular places to learn the basic ground rules for that. So if you want, where you start is where you end up. So if we expect to see disabled adults living in their own homes and not in these gulags, they're going to have to be known and know their neighbors. So this is not a utopian view, by the way. It's already happening, and it's happening well enough and widespread enough for there to be new problems. And all new opportunities merely bring you a new set of mistakes you haven't learned yet. But in some ways, what I think we're really coping with in these situations where people are more in supported living, supported employment, supported education, what we're re-encountering are simply the old problems that all people have all had all over the world all along anyway. And basically, my experience of adult life has been that you have to make important decisions with inadequate information. You're always worrying about whether something's too much or too little. And a lot of life, for better or worse, is about almost or too late. And we're not going to get rid of that with technology. But what I hope comes next is an embracing of ordinary life with its ordinary problems. And I think a lot of the conversation in our group has been about so-called behavioral difficulties, or really variations of ordinary problems that people have. And in our group, we've also been talking about what it's going to take to create this brave new normal that we're hoping to see. And parents have been pretty clear. There's a lot of rhetoric about this partnership between parents and professionals. And the reality is those partnerships are never equal. For parents of so-called ordinary kids, professionals can make recommendations, but parents can say yes or no. But for so-called special kids, a lot of our professional suggestions become parental command. And I think we overestimate especially when you're comfortable, you overestimate the comfort of the afflicted. And so this idea of creating a new community is going to create some new problems for those of us who are service providers. If I'm working for social services and think that I'm supporting Lindsay or Osmond, I may think I'm working for those people, but the reality is I work for social services. And at the end of the day, you will be put, or I will be put, to choosing between my loyalty to them as a friend and my responsibility to myself as an employable adult. That's an untenable position. So one logical place to start looking at this is giving financial control to the people with the disability. And this obviously is going to create new problems, but it's going to take away this subtle form of oppression, which isn't always so subtle. But people talk a lot about empowering, and that always makes me nervous. When people are going to give me something, I'm often deeply suspicious. And with good reason, but we're not going to talk about my childhood now. But one real form of power is money. But the other thing to remember is real power is not given, it's taken. And until disabled people start taking this power for themselves, it's not going to be real, it's going to be rhetoric. And at the moment, it seems to me, disabled people have to choose between two groups of helpers. People who are well-intentioned but untrustworthy, and another group that's exactly the opposite, where they're untrustworthy but well-intentioned. That was the laugh line, but we don't have to dwell on that. Okay. Some parents in the group are taking small and local actions for their sons and daughters. Some people are sitting on regional and national committees. Some people are sitting uninvited in local education authority buildings. You know who you are. And all of us have to figure out for ourselves which of these paths is the most useful for us to take. But essentially, I think our common denominator is that what we're trying to do is work to heal these deep divisions between parents, children, schools, administrators, purchasers, basically government. And some people are going to choose to do this really noisy and in a confrontational way, and other people are going to choose to do this very quietly and behind the scenes. But meanwhile, we need to respect that each of these strategies has some purpose for different people at different times. And I think one of the things we can do immediately is stop trying to change other people. And I mean not just disabled people, but the temporarily able-bodied as well. There's a profound impulse in human beings towards creating other people in our own image. And I think it's about learning to respect ourselves and respect the truths that other people have to speak, even when we disagree with them. And, you know, at that point of platitude, it's when I need to remind you that the reason I say a lot of this is that none of this is natural impulse for me. I am, by nature, severe to profoundly obnoxious. I like good fights. I'm quick to judge people. And I'm occasionally tempted to force people to see my point of view, because I realize that if they did, they too could be enlightened. And one of the things that I'm getting away from, but not entirely, because it's still a motto I really like, is, you know, had I been present at the creation, I could have offered several useful hints. So one of the parents in our group said something that I thought was fairly shocking. And she said, you know, you professionals don't know how to do inclusion. And so, of course, I asked her in my best therapy voice, tell me more. And she said, none of us does. That we all grew up in a society that was not inclusive. This is all early days for us. We're struggling as we go along, and we're all learning as we go along. And so I want to thank the people from Workshop 2 who have been building a place that I need to remember that. And also to remember that certainly for me, it's been a lot easier to judge. It's been even easier for me to forgive at times than it has been to understand. And that's the real barrier that I run into. And what I think we're all struggling here to do is to build a world big enough for all of us. So this is our last year here in this format, and this has been a place where a lot of us have made new friends. Some of us have found new courage, new strength. And we need to move on, but we also need to keep doing all of this. And being middle-aged, I offer advice. Don't do it alone. Even though I wish you could, you can't. And one thing that I keep coming back to in my understanding of change is that it all comes back to a relationship. That without a relationship with someone or something that calls us, the us that really is us, that calls us and when we get there supports us, That's the only way we can heal and change. And when we do that, it's almost by accident that we change the world. So, let's do that. Thanks.
This breeze that gently breaks up the seed cups, puffballs, and lazily scatters the spores across the field. The many rise and drift, a few will fall to root. On what does our common life depend? This breeze like somebody's steady breath, worrying the spider's trace word, heavy with dew, or like a long, side-out vowel in a sinuous curve. A small wind, like light, invisible except by effect, like the I really am, as gentle as roughened existence. The action of grit in a crow's craw that stirs the large trees beyond the edge of this field of dandelions, buttercups, Queen Anne's lace, ordinary, brilliant weeds that stirs the large trees at the edge of this clearing to make nervous, bright birds fall about in their tranquil shadow. This breeze that makes the seen world feel as tactile as a painted landscape. How to embrace all this except with the eye? But nature, busy about herself, everything in her scrambles with innocent greed, eventually reaches out to us and takes us back like this breeze, shivering the thin line of saplings rising from something not known, nothing, then settling too. Where does the breeze go when it dies? When I reach that dark place where the taproot reaches the water, where will this I be?
This is a song by Herb Lovett. How beautiful it is How wonderful to hear, how lucky you are to be alive on this day, full of electricity, memory, and thrill, as it surges ahead like a wave on the shore, as it drifts along like a leaf on a breeze, as it runs its course like a brook to the sea. This has been a song by Herb Lovett. He was a type of genius in his own little way.